This is Ideal Coaches for Coach Rome. Weighing on the weight classes, episode 15A, the preview to UFC 142, headlined by the Featherweight Championship bout, Chad Mendes versus going against the champion Jose Aldo. We're back in Brazil, so let's get into it. Lightweight bout, Sam Stout versus Diego Tavares. After having 9 of his 11 UFC fights go the distance, Sam Stout was finally able to have a bout last less than 15 minutes against Yates Edwards. Between him and his opponent, Diego Tavares, they have 7 fight bonuses between them currently and might achieve the 8th at UFC 142. While having the overall better game planning and skill set, Stout is more often than not okay with having the fight left in the judges' hands. Usually it's towards the third round where, at least in my mind, that his pace slows down voluntarily as though he has already had the fight in the bag. Needless to say, that has worked against him on more than one occasion. Tavares is a BJJ black belt that has not really put that groundwork into use in his UFC appearances, and nothing indicates that he will try to do that this time around. Although he likes to tangle with his opponents, 2 of his 3 fight bonuses unfortunately resulted in losses. The bigger concern is that Diego has been knocked out by lesser strikers than Sam Stout. I expect that even though all the outside forces will be playing against Stout, he should be able to formulate a way to do enough damage to either clearly get the unanimous decision win or finish Tavares. Lightweight bout, Edson Barboza versus Terry Etim. I was very critical of Terry Etim for taking the fight against Edward Fuloloto at UFC 138, due to the fact that in comparable records and experience, it was on paper a cakewalk fight for Terry when he didn't need one of those. At the very least, Etim made the most of the situation by getting the jobber out of the fight in 17 seconds, something that has to be commended however you saw that fight. He's going against Edson Barboza, someone who is comparable to himself in the striking department. While Edson Barboza has slick combinations and evasiveness, he did not really display that in his last fight against Wallace Pearson at UFC 134. The home court advantage was working in his favor for the split decision win. While it may seem like Etim has a more diverse game with a number of his wins coming from chokes, namely the guillotine, a submission that European strikers are good at for some reason, when Terry is facing a fighter that is mid-level such as Barboza, who are not afraid of the pace being pushed, it seems to frustrate him to the point where he loses focus and thus the fight. I see the first round being a long filling out period, then Barboza doing enough damage to get the unanimous decision win. Middleweight bout, Anthony Rumble Johnson versus Vitor Belfort. I'm going to straight out say it. This could be the upset of the night. This has nothing to do with how big one fighter's name is compared to the other guy. It's just seeing the opposing skill sets fight each other. Vitor Belfort has been reborn at middleweight with the exception of the loss to Anderson Silva, has finished all of his opponents in 2 rounds or less. There is something to be said about his recent opponents, however. None of his opponents, outside of Matt Lindland, was a good wrestler. And Lindland has not aged well or evolved in MMA. All the other fighters that can use their strength against Belfort, that being Dan Henderson, Randy Couture, Overeem at a catchweight, and Tito Ortiz have all given him trouble, and worse, losses. I know that was years ago. However, Vitor has not faced a fighter like the ones I mentioned at middleweight, a weight class that the Phenom should have always been at. Rumble Johnson has shown some fight IQ against Dan Hardy by using his takedowns, even though that fight was boring as hell. Clinch work and close-range boxing have not yet been shown by Anthony, keys to beating Vitor, and it remains to be seen if he can use that effectively. But the fact that Johnson will be more relaxed at middleweight is something to consider. As long as Johnson avoids the firefight, something that Akiyama, for one reason or another, invited, he has all the tools in his box to make this a somber night for the favorite. The main event. UFC Featherweight bout. The challenger, Chad Mendes, versus the champion, Jose Aldo. Going from prelim to main event championship bout is a giant step that the undefeated Chad Mendes will be taking when he faces off against the champ, Jose Aldo. UFC jitters is a new term that the Zuffa machine has coined for an otherwise great fighters not living up to expectations. I personally never believed in that, but I would not have problems if and when Mendes goes under this new category. Seeing that this fight takes place in Brazil, and simply grinding out a fighter like Aldo to a unanimous decision is almost impossible to be successful
even in the States. I cannot see Chad's wrestling or his ground and pound, which is remarkable considering that style is not as effective anymore on the whole in MMA, working on a fighter with considerable ground game off his back. Yes, I know about the Omagawa fight, but the judo guys are never good off their back, and the Ronnie fight, well, that was just a very stylistically great matchup for Mendes. Chad's striking is not bad, but it's clear that it's not on the level of the champion. Aldo may or may not be able to finish Mendes unless he clips him early, but nonetheless, the overall variety of offensive weapons, plus his already good takedown defense being enhanced by training with Gray Maynard, should see the featherweight champ get his hand raised regardless.
Okay, so let me run down my picks. Got Sam Stout, Edson Barboza, Anthony Johnson in an upset, and I see the champion Jose Aldo retaining. Because of the number of foreign fighters and the lack of footage going on, I don't want to call any other fights. I do actually see Huzumar Harris winning, and I'm really interested in this guy named Eric Silva, who's going to be on the main card as well. Also, for those who watch me outside of YouTube, like on MMA Link or other various websites, please check out my YouTube page for my MMA Awards 2011. There will probably not be a weight on the weight classes for the next event, and I'll probably wait until UFC 143 to get back into it. Okay, guys, take care.